Hey MGTOWs, this is Vention, and I gotta admit I'm a little disgusted today. Had a good day working on an engine swing, putting a new one back in. Had a good day at work, and up until around maybe 8 when I heard that basically we have another big attack on Syria. And that whole big, huge false flag story about chemical weapons, and no proof has really been demonstrated. It's just, believe us, as soon as we moved out and we're going to leave the country, he let off chemical weapons and now we're bombing him. There's no way that's going to happen. It's not in Assad's best interest to use chemical weapons on his own people and attract the U.S.'s missiles back in again. So it's just a big, huge mess, I gotta say. It's nobody wants this war in the U.S. Nobody on the left, they're all anti-war, and nobody on the right wants this. Most of us are sort of conservative, libertarian types. We do not want any of this foreign BS, right? And that's the thing. It's a real demonstration that our government has completely disconnected from the people who live in this country. And when people overseas are saying, "Oh, Americans are terrible," the American government is not run really by the people. It's largely just funded by the big, huge international bankers, and it's a disgusting mess. Stephen Molyneux put it very well earlier today, where when the banks and the big moneyed interests who run the central banks, and like the Bank of International Settlements, all the central banks which are beholden to the Bank of International Settlements, and they're all they can just create all the money they want and buy anything they want. They can buy stocks, they can buy property, they can buy anything just by printing money, and it's just a real nasty business because they don't need to listen to us anymore, or at least not for the last, well, since Nixon disconnected the gold window, or shut off the gold window, which was made the U.S. dollar no longer backed by any kind of reality, and it allowed them to just print anything, you know. And it's just a disgusting mess, and we're just like being hauled really fast on a cart with a runaway. The horse is just going where it wants to go, and it's dragging us along, and we are pretty much screwed in this whole situation. We can yowl and everything and scream at it, but we can't really influence things where they actually matter. Whether Hillary was running the show or Trump is running the running the show, there will be enough pressure applied either one to give the deep state their wars, and it's a nasty business, and we don't control it. We can try to vote new people in, but every single time we always end up getting the country is run the way the elites want the country run. The illusion of democracy that we have, it's just mostly an illusion where it really matters. You know, we might be able to get some laws passed and maybe some repealed on the local levels, but as far as like federal law and whatnot goes, we just do not control that anymore, if we ever did. Supposedly, like 40, 50 years ago, there was a law passed that forced the Congress, both houses, to have their votes on record, so they didn't have a secret ballot, but they apparently used to. And that allowed for the representatives to say, yes, I voted for something when they didn't. So if you voted for a representative that really sort of agreed with your philosophy, he could go there and then actually do what you sent him there to do. And then then basically he would have deniability, because pressure could be applied against him to say, vote this way, but from like the super wealthy banker types, and he could say, well, I did, right? Whereas right now they absolutely know how these people are voting, so they can apply all the pressure they want to get them to vote the way they want to, make the decisions they want them to make. So it's just, those people freaking run the country, dudes. And it's a ugly, nasty business, and it's important to be aware of it. And as Stephen Molyneux was saying earlier, they have pretty much stolen our government. We can send new people in there, but eventually they're going to be doing what the bankers and the deep state want them to do. And now Trump has approved the shooting of the missiles into Syria and blowing up a bunch of people I really don't give a rip about either way. I have no quarrel with those people, but the deep state, the freaking banker class, are attempting to solidify their entire control over the entire world, and any country that doesn't play ball and have a central bank which is owned by them and controlled by them, then they are the enemy, and they need to have regime change. As soon as, of course, you have Iran, who's like not cooperating, and North Korea not cooperating. Syria, I don't think they have a central bank which is owned by them, the elites. So it looks like they're just attempting to boot Assad out and put some puppet in there, just like in the U.S., and basically take over that country. It's a nasty business, and it's the very exact reason why Bitcoins were invented in the first place. Back in 2008, 2009, some anonymous guy who was just in those big crazy intelligent crypto dark web chat groups he took a couple of pieces of technology from other places, like one of them's Hashcash, and added a few tweaks of his own and created the first Bitcoin node. And him and Hal Finney basically were working on it, and then that Hal Finney received the first Bitcoin transaction. And basically Bitcoin is something that can just that can just go right past the elite's control and bring wealth and money back, and the ability to hold your wealth back to people, individual people. And the elites sure don't like that. They love the ability to have every dollar that we hold constantly every year losing value, so we're forced to, as soon as we get it, we have to spend it, and either invest it in their crooked stock market where they have like all kinds of criminality going on, high frequency trading, and brokers lying and saying that you have these stocks that you're supposedly owning, and they don't even exist sometimes. And then of course you have commodity accounts that you could purchase, like that old company MF Global, and then they can turn around and pull the rug out from under you on those. And but there's something that is really difficult for them to to mess with, and that is Bitcoin. It's like right on the internet, and they, unlike what some people are saying, they cannot shut the internet down. This is a highly connected society, and and the elites and their big financial empire, they need the internet in order to maintain control of the areas of the world which they own and basically control, like the U.S. and all the countries that participating in the bombing of Syria. Those are the countries that are absolutely the most owned by the deep state, the elite Rothschild people, you know. So Bitcoin, it claws some of that power back, and they can't shut it down, because if they shut the internet down, they would lose control, and they're just going to be dealing with Bitcoin. They're attempting to do things like trying some manipulation, like the way they do with gold and silver. And gold and silver is great to hold to. I have a bunch of some gold and silver. Cashed in some for my Cambodian vacation, but I still have an ammo box and some spillover of silver. But basically, we're in a situation where okay, well, there's another problem, you know, that we don't control the government. That's one, and the conventional economy is like this big Ponzi scheme that tends to blow up about every 10 years or so. And on top of that, the financial system blowing up, we have another thing, the actual currency appears to be about to lose some serious value. And that's due to the petro yuan, which I described a couple videos ago, where the yuan, or China, is now setting up a market for international oil trades with their currency, the yuan. And up until now, I mean, it's still happening, but up until like very soon, people countries, in order to buy oil, they needed the dollar, because every time a country sold oil for something other than the U.S. dollar, the U.S. military is sent in and blows them up, right? Then you have they say, oh, it's weapons of mass destruction or terrorism and whatnot, and every single time it's a lie. Afghanistan, that whole thing, it was a nasty backward country, but the box cutter terrorists that's complete absolute bunk. The more you get into conspiracy stuff, the more evidence you hear about the how 9/11 was complete bunk. Building 7 blowing up and crashing into its own footprint when when it wasn't even hit by a plane. Suddenly, boom, 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 the explosions go up, and then the thing crashed into, just like a commercial demolition. Please, you know. And then, of course, Iraq, they were saying, oh, they are building nuclear weapons and whatnot, which was complete bunk as well. And now we're being told that Syria is using nerve gas on its people, but shit, the only countries that's really using nerve gas, or has recently used nerve gas, is the U.S. In Fallujah in Iraq, where the helicopters were hovering about 40 feet off the ground, and they were just shooting flare, 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 and that white phosphorus flares were just like creating phosgene gas, which is chemical weapons, and we were using a freaking nerve gas on, and obviously it was nerve gas, even though it was deniability. They were using supposed flares, but it was all over the video. And that's one of the awesome things about the internet and companies like WikiLeaks. That information can be disseminated, and it can't be really locked away like it has in throughout history, right? But in any case, now they're telling us, Assad's using chemical weapons. I don't believe it for a second. The only thing he would know that if he uses chemical weapons, the only thing he would be asking for was to be overthrown and blown up by, all the deep state owned countries, right? So, where does this leave us? Back to the petro yuan, though. Now, the yuan, which is like the deep state, is starting to throw its support behind China, and now they're basically going to have the ability to buy and sell oil with the yuan. So the U.S. is going to fall into a situation where our currency isn't as valuable. It's all set up. The trends are right there. It's pretty obvious where we're going. It's going to be another situation just like Britain was like supreme, and then they were suddenly no longer the money of the world, the pound and all that. And then the U.S. rose to dominance, and now they're going to move the whole petro yuan or petrodollar scheme over to China, and basically the dollar's going to lose a lot of value, and probably not within a year. Maybe it might start by the end of this year, but over the next 2 or 3 years, it looks to me like the dollar's going to lose a good deal of value, and that's going to be happening right along with the financial system's normal business cycle reset, just like 2000, then 2008, now 2000. Well, it should have been 2016, but now all that Chinese money coming in looks like it's really stretched out the upside of the business cycle, and only now are we starting to drop into it. Like companies are closing all over the place. Like Sam's Club just recently closed a bunch of stores on the West Coast, and which was a pain for me because I really liked shopping there. But so we're going to be in a situation where banks are going to start failing, brokerages are going to start failing, stocks are going to start dropping, people are going to lose their jobs, their houses are going to get repossessed, and that extra amount of housing on the market, suddenly on the market, is going to drop the value dramatically, and it's going to be a whole big huge thing, right? If the currency drops enough and fast enough, we could have like emergency measures set up, like rationing. Like we might be in a situation where, in order to, everybody's able to buy a certain amount of gasoline every week or something. And if you have a big gas guzzler, you're going to have to find a way to get to work if you have a job with a certain amount of gas, and it might not be enough. So you might have to do a lot of carpooling and stuff like that. Now, me, in my case, I still have that old scooter that's I think it's like 90 miles per gallon or something like that. 60 mile, I think it might be 80, but it's like 60 mile per hour, 150 cc's, basically, and it'll go about and it's about 80 miles per gallon, right? So that I can stretch a gallon of gas a long way. I could commute several times to work, and basically my job is fairly secure. Anytime, business will be hurt, of course, but in order to get, unless it's Mad Max, they're gonna need diesel mechanics, and they're gonna need trucks to move those goods, and it's gonna be more expensive, but they've got to have trucks, and if that's the case, they've got to have mechanics to fix them. So what's gonna happen? We're gonna have over the next few years, the currency is going to really start to suffer, and it's going to be it's going to be tough. And then, of course, on top of that, we have the normal financial recession, which should have started in 2016, but it's starting now. And we're going to have the currency problem as well, where the dollar starts losing a lot of value. And then foreign goods and internationally priced goods like wheat and gasoline and diesel and stuff are all going to have to go up in price because our dollar won't be as valuable. But there's other things that are priced internationally, which is gold and silver and bitcoins and the other cryptos, of course. Those are all on international markets. So when we run into a problem with the dollar actually losing value, our current cryptocurrencies should gain enough easily to and gold and silver too, to make up for the drop in the currency. So if it gets cut in half, our bitcoins would probably double. But due to the panic and people not trusting centralized institutions the same way they didn't in the 2008 recession, we're going to have a situation where they're going to want something that they can store value in outside of the conventional economic system, outside of the trust-based system, like where you have to trust a company to hold your wealth for you, hold your 401k, hold your stocks, hold your gold shares like the SLV or GLD indexes. Well, not indexes, but funds, whatever. In any case, people will want things that they can hold and control themselves without having to trust some corrupt financial institution. And that is like bitcoins, gold, and silver. I highly recommend all of them. Interesting how a day before the missiles started flying in Syria, we had a massive spike in bitcoins. Let me show you what. It's kind of awkward, but we've got right here on the 9th, that's that little section right after the first big drop-off. That's when I made that last video, whereas I was recommending, I was saying that I think bitcoins have bottomed. I think they have, but I'm not sure. It could conceivably, it's up pretty good at 8,100, and I bought those bitcoins at 6,700. So it's nice little bonus, nice little increase, but they could go back down, and in which case I'll just keep dumping most of my surplus income into them, and then eventually, especially when people start losing confidence in the conventional economic system, eventually those assets should go up pretty dramatically. People are forecasting like $25,000, $100,000 bitcoins this year, and then of course in the year 2020, a year and a half, well maybe, a year and a half, I think, sometime in 2020, I can't remember when, the amount of bitcoins that are created every 10 minutes will get cut in half, right? It's called the halvening, and it happens every 4 years. And the last time was 2016, and when that occurred, it took a while, but actually bitcoins rose up. They pretty much doubled, and it was one of those things where they doubled just before the halvening. So it's a good bet that that'll happen then as well. So, if it's 100 grand by the end of this year or into next year, it'll probably double once the halvening occurs. So, man, we're talking real money. So that's why I'm just stacking every freaking Bitcoin I can get my hands on. So let's see what else. with the possible rationing that we might actually have once the dollar starts dropping, we could be in a situation where you're having to choose between gas for your car to get to work or enough food to keep healthy, to keep hunger at bay and keep, to eat right. I mean, people can maybe eat at McDonald's or eat, just garbage food, but if they, but in order to eat well, they would need, they might not have enough money to do it, right? So it's important. I think MGTOWs will do very well in that situation because we're very frugal and usually we got a decent surplus income. So we might get through this better than a lot of people. And we might have to like team up, like have multiple MGTOWs in one house or 2 MGTOWs in one apartment, just to cut those expenses down and basically, have as good a lifestyle as possible without a lot of money. Yeah, it's like, and right now, before we go into these hard times, which I see over the next 3 years, man, I highly recommend stacking silver, buying Bitcoins, and even do some basic preparedness, like I probably went deeper into it than I had to. Like, I've got a bunch of big buckets of wheat and a wheat grinder and massive freaking freeze-dried food and whatnot, solar panels, inverters, backup batteries. I think I've prepared probably more than I need to, but I am prepared. And when food starts getting seriously expensive, I can eat for almost nothing. Like, I have like a little thermo cooker. It's like a pot. You can bring it to a good hard boil and then put it into a big insulated outer container and close the lid, and what's in there remains hot for like 8 hours. And then you can do things like cooking stews and whatnot for only a real small amount of electricity or propane or whatever you're cooking with. And the wheat grinder, I can grind the wheat down into whole wheat flour, and that wheat was created like probably 12 years ago because it's all nitro packed. It'll last longer than I will. But these days I wouldn't recommend eating whole wheat unless it's organic, because the farmers, the chemical farmers these days, they basically nuke the field with Roundup, plant their crop, the wheat grows up, and then once it's ready to harvest, it's a pain to dry it, right? And the best way to dry it is to dry it on the stalk. So they just dump insane amounts of Roundup all over the freaking field, killing even the Roundup ready wheat plants. And then they sit the dead corpses of the freaking wheat plant. They're still standing up, and the dead wheat then dries on the stalk. Then they can combine it and whatnot, and it's cheaper and faster and easier for them, but it's enormously more toxic for us. So these days I don't eat whole wheat bread. I just eat regular freaking white bread. Decent quality white bread. When I eat bread, which is not very often, I will eat only white bread. And I stay far away from whole wheat bread now. But that wheat in my sheds, that was grown before that practice started. So I have no problem eating that wheat. And anyway, you can take some wheat, whole wheat if it's organic, and you can put it in a thermos and put hot boiling water in there and leave it overnight. Dump it into like a a dish and you've got a really tasty hot cereal for just a couple of cents. And it's just, there's ways you can save a lot of money. So, and of course, if you can, if you are in a country that doesn't violate your right to self-defense, you can pick up a pistol and make sure that you are able to use it. And then, of course, pepper spray is a great alternative if you're in a place like maybe the UK or somewhere where they've grabbed all the guns and now only the criminals have the guns. Criminals and the government, which are kind of the same. So other than that, I would also recommend holding on to coins. Like, let me see if I can show you what I mean here. Basically, whenever I buy anything, I always just throw the change here and sort them out, and these are quarters. It's probably quite a pile of money here, but you see, these are actual U.S. Mint printed or stamped coins. They actually have an intrinsic value in base metals, and basically, if we get into a situation where the dollar is dramatically less, it's a good bet that they will attempt to roll out a different form of currency. They might do some kind of crypto thing, but in the past they've just issued new dollars, or new currency, and then they revalue the old currency, the old coins, which are more expensive to manufacture. They just roll those out into the new system and then just revalue them at a much higher level. So if we're in a situation where the dollar really has a problem and really starts to collapse, and then they roll out another type of currency, some other system, chances are they will revalue the coins, in which case, or even if they don't, there's a lot of base metal value in those coins. There's a website called Coinflation. It'll tell you how much each of these coins are worth in current value, metal value. So gold, silver, bitcoins, food, backup power is always good. I got some solar panels, got a generator. There could be some significant disruptions, and if you have a yard, which I am lucky enough to own outright without a mortgage, you can extend your garden and really start growing some serious food. And that, if things get as bad as I think they might, that could actually make a real difference in your overall well-being. So it's, that's what I see coming. So another reason, of course, that I buy bitcoins is, or I started buying bitcoins back in 2014, is because I was just pissed off at the conventional system and how badly we're being used, how badly we're just being taken advantage of, with the massive money printing against our will. Nobody wanted the TARP when they were bailing out all the big banks in the 2008 recession. Nobody wanted that, but they rammed it down our throats because the banks wanted their control. I mean, the deep state banker types, they just want that control, and they're getting it. But bitcoins go right around that system, and they go right past capital controls. When the banks start failing and they do a bail-in like they did in Cyprus a few years ago, they will basically, bitcoins will be immune to that, and they don't dare shut the internet down, which is how they would have to do it, shut off bitcoins. So they would be, their they don't have a way of shutting it down. Basically, they can outlaw it in several different countries, but so many other countries it's still in such demand that that it's unlikely they're going to shut it down. Plus, a lot of very, very wealthy people and very wealthy companies, real new big power interests, are getting into crypto and bitcoins. Like, I think it was J.P. Morgan owns Circle, and they bought Poloniex or some other big Bitcoin exchange. Those, and the more investment that the big conventional financial system makes in crypto, the less likely they're going to shut this thing down, because there's a lot of big money that is making money from crypto, and they want to keep it going. So then you have the really old families, ancient families like the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Schiffs. They're probably against it, but a lot of their competing elites, they're investing in Bitcoin. So it's going to be an interesting struggle amongst the elites. But as Bitcoins go up, the people who are fighting for Bitcoin will become more and more wealthy and more powerful. It's going to be a hard thing to shut down. So I'm still buying them. Okay, and then, yeah, we're in a, so I am something of a rebel. I'm taking a lot of my own productivity and power out of the system which they profit from, and just dumping it right into Bitcoins. And they, however, want us to be working our butts off, working overtime, like several of my coworkers, and spending all the way up to the absolute limit and maybe beyond, and then they can just, every single time you spend $1, I mean, you had to pay income tax to earn the $1. Then when you spend it, you've got to pay like the practically 10% sales tax we have here in Washington State. And then as soon as that $1 changes hands again, then the guy that you spent the money into or to, he has to pay income tax on that $1 again. And then every single time that $1 changes hands, the feds are taking income tax and the state's taking sales tax, and then it's just a huge load, a huge burden on all of us. And if you can just throttle back your spending, you are going to throttle back your tax footprint as well. And then I almost never work overtime unless it's like really important. So I pay less income tax per hour that I work, right? Because if I worked so much more, I would earn a lot more, and then all of my wealth, all my income would be taxed at a good deal higher level, so I would be working less efficiently, basically. So that's just a way of me taking my power back from the system and socking it away into things that don't benefit the system. For example, every time you grow a tomato on your back porch or your yard and you eat that tomato, you have created value, and you've harvested that value, and you've benefited from that value, and you cut the state and the feds and everybody completely out of that deal, and it's all you. And it's a lot healthier too. There's no pesticides or whatnot on it. So yeah, that's a big deal. And it's a big part of MGTOW is taking our power back from the abusive government, the abusive family court system, and other courts. It's just a way of sort of a passive resistance to what's happening to us. So that's another thing. And as we move into this next recession, and if we have a problem with the currency like I expect, a lot of our expats, our MGTOW expats who are living overseas happily, they might be in a situation where their dollar doesn't go nearly as far over there, and they might just have to find a way to get their butts back home. Otherwise, being homeless in the States is a lot better if you're an American than being homeless in some foreign country, Okay, so, well, that's about all I got for you. I was thinking about doing a live stream, but man, I'm just disgusted by this whole Syria thing. It's just an absolute demonstration. It's absolute proof that the people in the United States and France and whatever country was helping blow up Syria, the citizens in these countries do not have control of what the governments do. Clearly, because the right doesn't want this freaking war. The left doesn't want the war. People in the middle, they don't want this war. The only people who want this war are the people who who own the Federal Reserve, own the Bank of International Settlements. Those people, they want this war. And they created and print enough money to apply enough pressure and to get what they want. Oh, that's interesting. My focus is a little off. Okay, guys, well, that's about all I got for you. And I think I'll close out with peace, freedom, and prosperity. That's the MGTOW way.